while the customer was driving, the vehicle would randomly adjust the height of the vehicle or lower, in his case, while he's driving, like in the middle of the road, at a light, or just while in motion. The main duty of the valve block is to allow air to go in and out of the different corners of the suspension. So let's say you're going over a speed bump, the suspension actively moves and adjusts to how the vehicle articulates. So what the valve block is doing is it's allowing air to go in and out of the air suspension as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible as well, to not allow the truck or the vehicle to move excessively. What was happening in this case was, as he's driving or as he was turning, the suspension was lowering excessively to where he would notice, and he just didn't. It's a safety issue at that point. You don't want it to lower too far below the accepted ranges of what the system allows, because a few things could happen. I mean, if the front suspension were to slam completely all the way to the floor, what it can do is you can start damaging body components like your front fenders, the bumper, as well as in the rear, you would more than likely damage the quarter panel. Every vehicle is different, but this would be a common concern with this chassis here, just this chassis in particular. So the 166 chassis is ML/GL, really big SUV, and it's very common because the valve block, the actual device, the actual component itself, when it gets too hot, it'll melt internally, so then it'll not allow air to either relieve the air in a sense where it wants to relieve it, or introduce air, add air to the system when it wants to. So in this case, it wasn't allowing one or the other. So internally, the valve block was just not functioning. It was not allowing air to go in a certain direction of the suspension. And well, I mean, Mercedes, they're very smart in their technology. So everything is electronically monitored, not controlled, but at least monitored. So the system at least knows where everything is at all times. At the start of this diagnosis, what I wanted to make sure was, I wanted to make sure that the actual air suspension struts were not leaking. With our computer, I added pressure to each of the struts and bags, which you're able to do with the computer. I'm able to go into an individual strut or bag in the rear and add pressure or relieve pressure, give or take what I need to do in the situation. What we like to do after, of course, adding pressure to the system is I like to make sure it's up to its normal level, which it gives me a certain value of what the normal level would be at. And I'd get it to that level, and then I would go ahead and start actuating the actual buttons in the car, like if I were the customer, to see how it reacts afterwards. And then from then on, I'd continue my diagnosis. It's very engineered in a way where we're able to monitor all the values, and as well as if anything were to go wrong, it lets the customer know as soon as possible. That way they can figure out what they need to do with the vehicle. Well, I mean, any mechanic can do just about anything that they are capable of doing, but here at the Benz Shop, with the tools and of course the experience that we have, we're just able to get there just a little bit faster maybe, and more efficiently, of course, to identify the actual problem and be able to give the customer an actual solution to what's going on with their car. It's not necessarily a complicated system. Just have to make sure that, of course, the air compressor is running when it should be running. We have to make sure that the valve body is opening the valves in the specific corners of the system as it's calibrating. Basically, we're just trying to make sure that the air suspension, because air suspension, of course, is air, so any small pinhole leaks, it will affect how the vehicle rides. Before we can even make sure it has no leaks, we need to make sure that the vehicle is actually calibrated to where it should be at, to have a base understanding of the system. So what I'm doing now is I'm just making sure that the vehicle level is where it should be at, and if it's not, what I normally like to do is I like to actuate the buttons here inside the vehicle. Again, just to see how it's going to react, of course. And of course, the door has to be closed in order for the system to operate. In total, I've been on this repair for about 3.5 hours. That's without the diagnosis. This is the multiplexer that allows us to communicate with the vehicle. And as you see, the green wire comes up to our computer here. And our computer, of course, allows us to communicate with the vehicle in all aspects of all the components, all of the electrical systems. This is how I'm able to see the level of the vehicle. And of course, as we can see, it's not very even. but it's going through the process as of right now of automatically correcting the vehicle level. I feel very confident that this customer's concern will definitely be resolved and he'll be able to drive down the road comfortably and as well as safely. Air suspension is very meticulous about how it likes to ride. So if you have any warnings involving your pneumatic suspension or even hydraulic suspension, one's air, one's of course hydraulic fluid, but they operate the same. It's all active suspension. It all operates actively as the vehicle moves. All in all, it should give you a warning if anything were to be of concern or not in the right specs. And of course, we have all of the tools and abilities and experience to figure out a solution for the vehicle.